3, 2.
Good evening. Welcome to the City Council meeting for Tuesday, January 16th, 2024. Mrs. Hilbert, will you please call roll?
Yes, sir. Councilman De La Garza?
I am present.
Councilwoman Solis? Here. Councilman Crocker?
Here.
Councilwoman Scott? Mayor Pro Tem Young? Here. Councilman Lofgren?
Here.
And Mayor Bauknight.
Here. If everyone will please rise for the pledges, followed by a moment of silence. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Garza. How are you?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm great, enjoying this weather. I hope everyone is as well.
As long as it stays sunny like that, it can be a little chilly.
Yeah, that's right. Stay away from the shade, right?
That's right.
We do have some announcements this evening, and so bear with me because we do have quite a few. On behalf of the City Secretary's Office, we want to remind the public that we are now accepting applications for a place on the ballot for the May 4th, 2024 election from Wednesday, January 17th at 8 a.m. to Friday, February 16th at 5 p.m. The May 4th election will elect council representatives for districts 1 through 4. Application packets are available from the City Secretary's Office in person and on the city's website at victoriatx.gov/elections. As we've become accustomed to doing, we will be hosting an informational session for candidates interested in these positions on May 4th. The candidates for the May 4th, 2024 general election on Tuesday, February 6th from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. here in council chambers. On behalf of the library, and specifically on behalf of the Friends of the Library, we want to remind the public that the Friends of the Library book sale is currently running daily this week in the Bronte Room and will run through Saturday, January 20th. Funding from the Friends makes it possible for the library to offer special programs at no cost to the public. On behalf of the Parks Department, Parks and Rec will be hosting a hunter safety education class at Sun Valley Ranch on Saturday, January 27th. In addition, Parks and Rec will be hosting a second Texas Youth Hunting Program opportunity in partnership with the Port of Victoria. This will be held on February 2nd through the 4th. The Texas Youth Hunting Program seeks to introduce underserved youth to hunting who otherwise may not have an opportunity to learn. For more information and to register, the public can visit victoriatx.gov/parks. And I'm not done. On behalf of the Environmental Services and Keep Victoria Beautiful, we are currently seeking volunteers for a cleanup in the northern part of Silver City neighborhood that will take place on Saturday, February 24th at 9 a.m. With check-in in the parking lot at Greater Mount Calvary Baptist Church, which is located at 3101 Callis Street. Individuals and groups who would like to volunteer are encouraged to register in advance at victoriatx.gov/KVB. On behalf of CVB, we want to remind the public that we are seeking 2 volunteers to serve on the Tourism Advisory Board. Applications are due by 12 p.m. on Friday, February 2nd. The 2 vacancies must be filled by representatives of the arts or sports/outdoor tourism sectors, and applications can be found at victoriatx.gov/tourism. And that's it.
That's all?
That's it.
Okay.
Yeah. I haven't even gotten to recognitions yet, but for announcements, that's it. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's go on into public and employee recognitions. We have a a.VISD School Board Recognition Month proclamation.
Yes, sir. Whereas the mission of public schools is to meet the educational needs of all children and to empower them to become competent, productive contributors to a democratic society in an ever-changing world, and whereas local school board members are elected by their community members to do what's best for students, and whereas local school board members work closely with parents, educational professionals, and other community members to create an educational vision we want for our students, and whereas local school board members are responsible for ensuring the structure that provides a solid foundation for our school system, and whereas local school board members are strong advocates for public education and responsible for communicating the needs of school districts to the public and the public's expectations to the district. Now therefore I, Jeff Bauknight, Mayor of the City of Victoria, do officially declare January 2024 as School Board Recognition Month in Victoria, Texas, and urge all citizens to join me in recognizing the dedication and hard work of local school board members and work with them to mold an education system that meets the needs of both today's and tomorrow's children.
I won't take that long, I promise. First of all, thank you. This is an incredible act of kindness, and we appreciate you stopping and taking the time, especially on this special year for us as we enter our 150th year, as the city celebrates 200 years. What we do would not be possible without your partnership and your hard work on your end as our city representatives. I also am incredibly humbled by this because I know that there were many, many, many people who walked and sat in these seats long before we did. And I'd like to share this award with, or this proclamation rather, with all of those who've served on the board in the past, with those that serve on the board of our private schools here, because we know that there's a task before them as well. But mostly, I always like to say that the good Lord rises to my level of incompetence. And he has done that over the last 5 years through an incredible staff, the administration, the teachers, and all the staff of VISD. And so tonight, I personally, and on behalf of the board, want to thank all of them because they're the ones that really make all this possible. So thank you very much. Appreciate you.
Well, Mr. Mercer, thank you, and to all the board members that are here tonight. Everyone is in attendance, and we appreciate y'all's service to the community as well. Y'all are doing a great job, and please keep up the great work on behalf of our children. Thank you. All right, now we have a recognition of the City Secretary's Office for the 5-Star Award for 2023. Mr. Garza?
Absolutely. So I do have a few recognitions. This one's listed on the agenda, and I do want to ask April Hilbrick, Sandra West, Rebecca Dietzel, and Jackie Pettis to come up, and we're going to be taking a picture here shortly. But this is an outstanding achievement that marks the 21st time the City Secretary's Office has been recognized for this award. They're recognized by the Texas Department of State Health Services and have received the 5-Star Award for Excellence in the Vital Statistics registration process. Award criteria includes training, customer service, security, and software maintenance. And I'm sure everybody can agree that under April's leadership, this office continues to do an amazing job for us. Thank you all. And Mayor, if you wouldn't mind staying up for another picture, this one's kind of not on the agenda, but we have put out recently a press release, but I do want to ask the finance staff, Gilbert Reyna, Wesley Janicek, Sarah Vasquez, and Adrian Vargas, if they're here, to please come up for a picture with the mayor. But, if we think 21 years is a lot, then this is really going to sound even more amazing. But this is the 39th consecutive achievement for the Finance Department to receive the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting from the Government Finance Officers Association for its end-of-year financial report for fiscal year 22. The certification recognizes state and local governments that go beyond minimum accounting standards and reflect the spirit of transparency and full disclosure. And again, I'm sure we can all agree that under Gilbert's leadership, the Finance Department has done an excellent job in being transparent and accessible with our finances, and we couldn't be prouder of the team, so congratulations. And lastly, I would be remiss if I didn't take a quick minute to acknowledge that this is our interim fire chief's last council meeting. So Chief Martin, if you wouldn't mind coming up really quick. Don't worry, I don't have anything formal. We're going to save that to your retirement party. But I do want to obviously acknowledge his 36 years of service to our fire department. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but you started with the Victoria Fire Department at age 18.
I did.
And so this literally has been your life's work. And so we're definitely very appreciative. I know I've joked in the past about some technology things, but all joking aside, you actually have contributed directly to a lot of the technological advancements of the fire department. And we certainly wouldn't be where we are now in terms of literally being one of the leading fire departments in the whole state, if not the country, if it weren't for your leadership. And we definitely appreciate your service to the fire department. and definitely wish you the best in your future endeavor.
Thank you.
And like I said, the formalities will come at your retirement gig, but I felt it was appropriate to mention it tonight since this is your last city council meeting in this role.
I appreciate those comments, Mayor and Council. I just want to take this opportunity to say thank you. Thank you to the department, to the city, and the community for allowing me to serve in the capacity, the different capacities that I've served in with the fire department for 36 and a half years. It's been an honor and it's been a privilege. And I wish the incoming Chief Gomez and the men and women of the Victoria Fire Department, the best fire department in the state of Texas, the best in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it.
That's all?
That's it. Yep.
All right. All right, we'll go into items from council. Yes, sir, Mr. De La Garza.
I will not be here the next meeting, first meeting in February,
Okay,
so I'll just make that note.
all right, thank you.
Mayor, I just had one thing real quick. I was notified over the weekend or received a communication from a citizen about what was reported to be a pack of stray dogs that was around Navarro and Second Street at the time. And, you know, of course, that being a county function, I related that individual that that is a county function to reach out to animal control and that I would do the same. And so hopefully he did so. And I called animal control, left a message, but just want to remind people that if you have that situation, have that issue, call the county animal control first instead of the city. You just eliminate one more step in the communication. So.
Yep. Great. Nobody else? All right. We'll close items from council and go into citizens' communication. David Doc Peters. Come on up. You got 3 minutes.
I'll be quick, real quick. I just wanted to introduce myself. April had contacted me that there was an opening in the Planning and Building Commission. And I'm just throwing, I'm going to join the team. I want to join the team of a great city. And I'm done.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Fisk.
Bless you. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. We know there are a large number of unhoused people in Austin, many of whom are working, many of whom are living in their cars. All right? A short-term solution or something that might help alleviate that would be if the city, possibly in conjunction with the county, would establish safe parking areas, because we know it's dangerous for individuals to sleep in their cars. It would require, obviously, bathroom facilities and security. It would also enable those agencies that provide assistance to have a common place where they could go to offer whatever assistance they could, take surveys, to direct them to the more suitable things or more suitable agencies that can help them. And again, it's something that would be relatively low cost to the city, but would provide a service for those people who unfortunately are living in their cars, most of whom are working or have some kind of income, but not enough to be able to afford to live here in Victoria. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fisk. Dion Garcia.
Thank you for the time. I came to see if the city would approve the plan that I submitted to reconstruct the home that I have here, okay? The two options that I had are try to rebuild it or tear it down. And tearing it down financially is a burden because the cheapest price I got was $8,000 to tear it down. So if I had to tear it down, I would like to see what I would need to do for the grant that you offer for that. But if I had to, I would like to rebuild it, as the gentleman before me said about the housing crisis. My original goal when I moved to Austin was to rebuild the house and rent it out. The amount of money for rent is basically irrelevant. I just want somebody to take care of the property for me while I'm in Austin, because I used to live here, but now I live in Austin. So I know what the previous gentleman was talking about, okay? My biggest thing is the time frame, and because in the plan I submitted, I put 6 to 12 months, okay? I put 12 months because the ones that are gonna do the majority of the work are me and my brother, okay? Also in the plan, I put that there aren't any contractors involved, because the way Texas is regulated, you only need a license if you are a plumber, electrician, or HVAC. In the violations that the city gave us, there weren't any violations from that, okay? So that's why no contractors are involved, okay? Because general contractor, you don't really need a license unless it's plumbing, electrical, and HVAC. I know because I used to be a contractor. In the proposal that I submitted, I put my contractor's license. I let it lapse, and then when I tried to get it renewed over the summer, the city of Austin told me I didn't have to have it renewed unless it was electrical, plumbing, or HVAC, okay? It differs by city in terms of like the permits, but in terms of the license, general handyman, general contractor, you don't really need a license, okay? So that's why in the proposal, it says no contractors have been contacted on this, because in the work that, to get the house to code, there wasn't anything for electrical, plumbing, or HVAC, okay? And that is my goal, to see if y'all okay the proposal, or if not. If y'all okay it, the start date was around March when we have our income tax. And we would just be working Saturday and Sunday, and then, because I'm a teacher, so I can't work unless there's a break. In spring break, summer, I can really do, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. Other than that, it's Saturday and Sunday.
Okay, if you don't mind, if you would stick around till we get to that item, just in case we have any questions, I'd appreciate it.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Mr. Von der Ropp.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. My name is Michael Vondro. I live at 2204 East North Street. I wanted to thank Rick Madrid and Steve Solis. They're over here. One works in the Plan Commission, one works in Code Enforcement, and Chris Watts. They've been cleaning up the trailer park, and I appreciate it. I don't have to worry about my neighbor's sewer leak because it froze, so I don't have to worry about that, so everything's fine. Hopefully, it would stay cold the rest of the year, so I don't have to worry about it. I also want to thank Rick Madrid. He saved me like $1,500 because the gas leak, that was the landlord's problem and my problem, 50-50. And my portion was $1,500. And if I wouldn't have went through Rick Madrid, I'd had to pay the whole $3,000 and stuff. And they financed it with the general manager, $1,500 over 12 months. So I do appreciate it. It wouldn't have happened without Rick Madrid, because the general manager already said I'm responsible for it, and she wasn't going to work with me. But sometimes when the government gets involved, people tend to change their mind. So I appreciate it, and hopefully they can get that sewer leak fixed with a neighbor and stuff. I know they couldn't do it because it's Thanksgiving and it's Christmas and New Year's Day, and you can't fix it because it's Martin Luther King's Day, but there's no more excuses anymore. Well, maybe Valentine's Day, that might be the excuse. And there's a whole bunch of potholes that still hadn't fixed. The super lawyer had 5 years to plan on how to fix them, and still I don't see any plans. And I would like to see a cap on the lot fee. You know, we're paying $410 a month fee, and he's not even fixing his stuff. It would be like going to a steakhouse and you pay $50 for your steak, and they don't bring you your steak, you know. And for the amount we're paying, you know, we're not getting any service. And I do expect, you know, better service from the management and from the trailer park owner. There's no excuses for him not to help. Thanks, and have a good evening. Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, with that, we will close citizens' communications. We have no items with public hearing, and we'll go into the consent agenda.
Item D1 is the adoption of minutes of the regular meeting held on January 2nd, 2024. Item D2 is an ordinance vacating, closing, and abandoning an alley in response to a petition of 100% of the adjoining landowners. This item is on second and third reading. Item D3 is a resolution approving a purchase of one 2025 Freightliner M2106 with an Alumatech 14-foot dump bed from Doggett and Freightline of South Texas LLC in the amount of $150,651.52. And item D4 is a resolution approving a purchase and installation agreement for a multi-stage centrifugal blow and skid package at the surface water treatment plant from Environmental Improvements Incorporated in the amount of $268,900.
I move we adopt the consent agenda as read.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item E1.
Item E1 is a resolution hearing an appeal of the Building and Standards Commission demolition order for 1108 East Santa Rosa.
Good evening, Council. So you remember several months ago, you heard this appeal and granted additional time for the property owner to prepare a detailed plan. After a lot of communication with code enforcement had with the property owners, we did receive the detailed plan yesterday. Unfortunately, the detailed plan is deficient in several areas, specifically the material list and the cost. The detailed plan really took the staff report and expanded on it, but the proposed work is a lot more extensive really than what's been outlined as far as the materials and the costs that are going to be required to repair this building to meet minimum standards. I'd also like to note that the Building Standards Commission staff report really focused on the building envelope and the actual structural integrity of the structure. It did not get into the HVAC, mechanical, plumbing, or any of the systems. They were not evaluated for how much they comply with code or not, but in order for this property to ultimately receive a certificate of occupancy to actually be occupied, those systems would also have to be evaluated. So here's some photographs from today. As you can see, there has not been any progress. And there's still quite a bit of debris that is found on the property. Here's a refresher from the November 6th meeting when you first considered the appeal and granted the extension. And then these are the photos from the warrant in preparation for the Building Standards Commission meeting in October. So you can see there's the inside, I think, really highlights the amount of water penetration that has happened to the structure and highlights, you know, how extensive the work is. Those rafters would have to be replaced. The floor looks equally as bad with water damage and holes. Pulling back that sheetrock, we're sure to find wood rot on the studs because of the water damage. And for these reasons, staff does recommend that the order be upheld and the building be demolished.
Okay. So there's two options, right? He can demolish it himself. Is there CDBG funding for home demolition?
There is funding, but I would have to verify that this is in an eligible area. With it being on Santa Rosa, it would have to be, I believe, east of Laurent. But I'll have to verify that it's in an eligible tract. If you have access to the Building Standards Commission report, it might say that. I'm sorry, I don't have
I'm pulling it up on GIS.
that off the top of my head.
Did I understand you to basically say that if the proposed plan was completed, then the external area of the building would be in compliance with the code, but it would still not be livable? It would still stand as a vacant building?
Yes, ma'am. Until we evaluated those systems, and if they're deficient, then they would need to be brought up to code to, in order to receive a certificate of occupancy.
Thank you.
Right, at a minimum, you'd have to have plumbing verified and electrical. Most likely need to be upgraded to code. Air conditioning can be done with window units, but you would have to plan for that if you're gonna have it with your electrical too. But
According to GIS, it is.
According to GIS, it's in a, okay, so it is in an eligible census tract, so he would be eligible to apply, and we do have funds.
there are funds to demolish.
And to verify, since the October meeting, there hasn't been any work done that we could tell on the property?
Not even cleanup for
Okay.
the junk and debris. These photos were taken earlier today.
Is he willing to knock down some of the added portions to the house, maybe? Maybe that's why the cost wasn't as high as we would think? Mr. Garcia?
I'm willing to knock down portions of it because that portion right there was originally one that was collapsing and we knocked it down. But we haven't been in there because we don't want to do nothing illegally. So that's why we haven't worked on it since November or October. Because to work on it, we need the permit. And one of the inspectors originally talked to my brother with the plan that we submitted, and he was okay with it. And before we could get the permit, one of the supervisors said no. I mean, so that's why we're stuck, because we don't want to do nothing that is potentially illegal. You know, like if we have to have a permit to tear it down, then we get the permit to tear it down. If we need the permit to fix it, we get the permit to fix it. That's why we're kind of stuck.
So if there was CDBG funds, would you be okay in us knocking it down?
If that was the only option I had, then yes.
Mr. Garza, you said it was in the,
Yeah, yes, according to our GIS, it's within a qualified census tract.
okay. I would recommend that we do the knocking down. If he's gonna have to knock it down, let us knock it down for him. And it's still his property though, you know, we just knock it down for you.
Yeah, I mean, looking at, from what I know of construction costs now, I mean, 10,000 is gonna be not enough to do that job. I mean, I realize that you and your brother are taking care of the labor part. But, I mean, I could see if you were really getting after it and doing the work, and being that you are a teacher, you know, your main time to work on it's this summer. You know, if I lean towards getting it redone, you're still gonna have a plumber that's gonna come in there. You're gonna have to rewire the place. I mean, I don't know that AEP is gonna turn it back on with a meter.
I mean, well, it has power right now.
Oh, does it?
Yeah, because I have a video camera.
Okay.
In case somebody breaks in, you know. So, I mean, the house is powered.
But you'll have to get, because of the state of it, because you're gonna have to rip off sheetrock and everything, you'll have to get a rough-in inspection, right?
See, the inspections, we were gonna go like step by step. Because the main thing was, from the October meeting was to get it secured. And then after we get it secured, then we would go step by step. And in the plan, the roof would be the last one because the roof is the most expensive.
Roof
Ah,
should be the roof needs to be your first, otherwise you're gonna have continued damage.
Well, I mean.
You have to,
We have to level it first and then do that.
Yeah.
You know,
But you're not gonna stop the water damage without fixing the roof, it's just gonna continue. But, I mean, you're gonna probably be into it for $25,000 to $30,000. You know? Is that really what you wanna do?
well, I mean, it's like I said, I mean, if we have to knock it down, then,
There's grant funding to help you with that.
okay,
Is what we're saying. There's grant funding, it appears, to help you with that.
okay.
So I know you said you got a quote for $8,000, but how does the grant funding process work, Ms. Fulgham?
So we actually do all of the bidding and procurement and everything. So the applicant, he makes an application, gives us the title, and then we do environmental clearance with HUD. We submit pictures and information to HUD. Once they approve us, then we bid it out. Our contractor goes and does the demolition work. So the property owner, aside from the application, doesn't really have to do anything.
And he would be just then left with a clean, clear lot that he
Yes.
would need to keep maintained and mowed,
Mowed, yes.
and no liens on it.
No liens.
And he's indicated an interest in investing in Victoria. I mean, personally, I know it's not enough to build the house, but I'd like to see him use that money toward a structure that's a much better quality to start with.
Well, if the grant is able to demo the house, then you have and there's no liens, the house could be sold, or the lot could be sold for redevelopment by someone else as well, because there wouldn't be a cloud on the title as far as liens.
That help you make any other decision? Or is it something?
I mean, I'm all right with having it torn down, you know?
And then you'll be able to maintain the lot?
Yeah.
Or put it up for sale, or whatever you want?
Or build on it.
Yeah, or build on it, or whatever.
Okay,
Okay. You're okay with that?
yeah.
All right.
Better option.
Okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate you being here and visiting with us.
I just want to make sure that, I mean, we have not guaranteed the grant, the application, and it looks good, but it's not our place to say that grant's going to be given.
As long as we can get clearance through HUD,
There you go.
then we will try everything we can to make that happen.
So can we, so we would need to then vote to uphold this order. Can we put a contingency on it, on the grant?
For how long? I mean, the contingency being you uphold it if he gets the grant? Julie, how long do you expect that process would take?
Well, I guess while they look at that, my only comment to this would be that, staff ensure that whatever is decided is communicated to his brother.
Yes.
Correct. Yes.
As well. So
Yes.
we'll make sure that whatever gets decided gets communicated to both brothers, yeah.
So it can take up to 60 days. If the property is still in his parents' name, him and his brother would both have to sign an heirship affidavit, and we can help facilitate that and submit that with the application with the title.
Yeah, because I get the feeling there might be a different decision if that grant isn't there.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
Agreed.
Okay. Would someone mind making such a?
So I guess it's a motion to approve the. To uphold the Building and Standard Commission's demolition order conditioned upon the owner's receipt of CDBG grant to demo the building on the property. And for a period of 90 days?
Yep.
I seconded.
All right.
Otherwise, come back to us, I guess.
Yeah,
Again.
otherwise, yeah, have them come back to us so we can do it, but hopefully that'll take care of it. Any further discussion? Thank you again for being here, Mr. Garcia. Appreciate you making the drive in. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, E2.
Item E2 is a resolution reappointing or appointing members to the Buildings and Standards Commission.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The resolution before you tonight would reappoint or appoint members to the Building and Standards Commission. The purpose of that commission is to uphold hearings, or to hold hearings as requested by the Director of Development Services to hear and determine cases on substandard and unsafe buildings, just as we just discussed. Members do serve 2 years, and there are 7 members. So current members are John Clegg, Robert Brooks, David Brown, Craig Logger, Sherry Strickland, Victor Marshall, and Dean Rayburn Swallow. So the appointments that you're considering would all end on January 1st, 2026. All of the current board members, with the exception of Mr. Logger, have expressed an interest in being reappointed. The applications of the current board members were attached to the agenda for review. And then we did receive 3 additional applications from Robert Constantine, Suzette Henry, and David Doc Peters that spoke earlier. And they were also attached to the agenda for review. So your ballots were set on the dais beforehand, and they do include your name because you cannot vote by secret ballot. The first item I would like for you to consider is whether or not you would like to reappoint the 6 members that are currently serving on the board. You could do that by actually voting on the paper, or you could actually just tell me if you wanted to do that here.
I would like to reappoint everybody that's willing to be reappointed. Agreed. I agree.
Agree.
Okay, so that leaves 1 open spot that Mr. Logger did not want to be reappointed to at this time. So we have 3 applications. Those names are listed on the bottom of the ballot. Mr. Robert Constantine, Suzette Henry, and David Doc Peters. If you'll please circle 1 to indicate which person you would like to appoint to that board. Okay, the majority of the votes went to David Doc Peters, so his name would be entered on the resolution, along with the 6 other members that would be reappointed. Thank you.
Well, thank you to the 3 applicants. It's always great to have wonderful applications and applicants to fulfill these positions. Thank you for your service, Doc Peters. All right. E3, oh yeah, we need a motion now. Sorry.
So do we have to start with the top 6 and then add Doc on there?
Yes.
Okay. I move that we accept the current members, John Clegg, Robert Brooks, David Brown, Sherry Strickland, Victor Marshall, and Dean Rayburn to the Buildings and Standards Commission, and the new applicant, David Doc Peters.
Second.
A motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Now E3.
Item E3 is an ordinance adopting the Unified Development Ordinance by replacing Chapter 21 in its entirety and deleting Chapters 5, 9.5, 12, and Article 6 of the Chapter 12 of the City of Victoria Code of Ordinances. And this item is on second reading only.
Good evening. So as you know, we did have some input from local design professionals between the first and second reading. And so we have our consultant, Chance Sparks, here to go over the changes that we've made in the red line document.
All right, good evening. Happy to be back. Chance Sparks, Freeze and Nichols. What I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of take you through the red lines that you have in your packet, some of the highlights from that. Just a reminder of the origin of this. The whole point of this UDO effort is really getting all of your regulations to coordinate with one another in a format that works better, and to simplify, or in some cases, simply document the development process that you use. This whole point of this is to try to improve your development outcomes, whether it's development or redevelopment, but still keep that market-based ethos that seems to define Victoria along the way. And of course, hit that legally sound defensible document, which is a big part of what we are doing in this effort. Again, this is right at the tail end of the process. We've had lots of input to date. And from here, or since the last time we had a official reading, there's been a few other events. We of course had the first reading where we talked through some areas that you want further discussion. And then on the 8th, had a city council workshop where we worked through particularly the use separation elements. And then we had some interim meetings in between with design professionals, folks like that, which allowed for further refinement. January 2nd, we brought this back under the city manager's report portion of the agenda, and also had some additional interim meetings with interested parties, bringing us to the review draft that you have before you today. So what I'm going to do is kind of walk through the adjustments to the draft based on the first reading. So what's changed since then? So you're going to hear some of this of what we've already heard before. I'll try to move quickly through those pieces. But I want to make sure that we're clearly tying the string between what changed from your official first reading to the second reading. The first item I'm going to mention here is an adjustment to nonconformities. This is really an organizational adjustment, shifting so that the impact applications comes after the description of the different types of nonconformities. This is something identified by a design professional as it would be helpful to move this table and that language after those provisions, because then it's kind of telling the story and then here's the impact. We agree with that change, made that change. Is there a question there, or keep on going? All right.
No, just a stuffy nose.
This next one falls under your land use table changes. This is all items that you heard us talk about at the, I believe the workshop. So yeah, the first meeting. So kind of walked through, had some changes to lot size to clean those up, some adjustments to parking ratios. We've now made the change in draft for the animal use, replacing the term kennel. That's a change throughout the Unified Development Ordinance as well as in definitions. One of the things we also identified as we went through this as the temporary uses item that was in the ordinance before. After talking through it with Julie and her talking with some of the professionals that work with those, I decided that was a provision that simply probably wasn't needed. So we've actually eliminated that and consolidated anything that remained into the regular uses. Makes it a little bit cleaner table, a little bit easier to understand along the way. Again, these are all things we kind of talked about at a prior meeting. The next one is the very busy table, but this is really summarizing the changes to the use separation. Remember, this was the big conversation on the 8th, and then a follow-up on the 2nd. This takes that and puts it into that tabular form. A few key things to know about this table. This table does not appear in the code itself, but it's reflecting information that's in the code kind of in a single place. We understand that was a request from y'all. There's a column that you see on the right. This identifies that exemption language for that residential separation, where if you've got the frontage on a primary arterial or expressway, then that residential separation gets cut out. So you'll see the applicability of that in that far column for each of these uses. There's a few other specific alterations that have taken place in this. For brew pubs and nightclubs and lounges, that residential separation was dropped completely based on direction at the prior meeting, as well as the park separation, so that it directly reflects what your code says today on those separations. There's a second page to this too that I'll flip to, just so you can see it. Same thing with this industrial separation. The institutional separation you heard us talk about with correctional facilities, the exemption for federal, state, local owned facilities is baked into this now, as well as the exception for wind and solar power generation under infrastructure. Any questions on these separations? I think we caught everything that we discussed at the prior meetings pretty accurately. And there's a few other changes that are in the same vein of use-specific standards as well. But does this capture the separations correctly?
Can you go back one slide?
Sure thing.
Okay. I would just check on one
Right.
thing that I missed on there. Yeah, thank you.
And Chance, I know that there's been a question in regards to brew pubs, and it's with the exception of the downtown entertainment district, but we also have a kind of a cultural district as well. Is there a specific difference in why it's located strictly there versus maybe the larger cultural district? Are we preventing some opportunities because that's I guess, an independent, specialized district itself, and would that be warranted? But it's close to it could be close to residential in certain places as well, in the expansion.
Or churches.
Or churches, correct.
So the reason we put hospital, church, or school is it actually just mimics the TABC separation requirements in Chapter 14 to get your liquor license, because oftentimes when folks are coming, like Chance said it earlier, is the purpose of this is to make it real easy for folks to go through our development process. And sometimes that due diligence of the separation for the TABC was getting missed, so mimicking it here puts them on notice for the Chapter 14. So, I mean, we can definitely put it here, but it still may require variances to Chapter 14, the TABC license.
Is there a
separation.
limitation of distance for residences for brew pubs or nightclubs? There's not, correct?
Correct.
There's no limitation.
Right, we just
So
copied the
that's-
TABC, hospital, churches, and schools.
Which personally I still disagree with, but I understand. But, so this is just hospitals, churches, and schools, and there's an exemption even for that in the
Right.
downtown entertainment. And so where is the cultural district? I'm not
So,
clear where it is.
a couple comments to address your question specifically. When we established the entertainment district, one of the big objectives of that was for us to send a message, so to speak, that this is a priority area for us to have restaurants, right, have a certain atmosphere and environment, right? Hence the conversation around, the noise ordinance and whether, and in theory, wanting that to be a little bit different in the entertainment district. That ended up not being the case, but in theory, the idea is the entertainment district is an area that we've designated as a place that we want to prioritize activating in that manner. And so, to be consistent with that objective, this is why we have focused on the entertainment district. The cultural district that you referred to, as of now, is strictly just a cultural district that has been approved and adopted by council. There is a more formal cultural district designation that comes from the state that we've yet to finalize. And so as of now, the cultural district designation is strictly just at this level with council. The cultural district boundary is a little bit broader than the entertainment district intentionally, because the cultural district's trying to capture things like the 5 Points, museum, trying to capture some other areas, further south downtown, trying to capture the Mitchell School, right? And some activity that might be going on there. And so it was a different purpose for its creation. Obviously, we can always change this definition or however else, but keep in mind that in downtown alone, we have the entertainment district, which has a boundary. We have the Main Street, which has a boundary. We have the historic district, which has a boundary. And of course, we have a cultural district that has a boundary. And so we certainly have a lot of overlays, at play when it comes to downtown. And there might even be one that I'm just missing. I think actually Central Business District. Yeah, the TERS has its own boundary, yeah. I think the code identifies the Central Business District as its own area as well, right, for certain things. So there's definitely a lot of lines, to play with. But at the end of the day, the intention behind focusing in on the entertainment district boundary was because of what the purpose of the entertainment district is.
But if just theory, if a brew pub went to a Mitchell School location, it doesn't matter that this is in here in this wording, it would still be allowed if a variance was approved because of separation from a church.
Right.
They would still have to get that
Yeah, we would measure.
that variance anyway. It didn't matter if we wrote it in here with the mindset that we want to make sure that all options are available for Mitchell School. They still have a TABC law.
Right.
In Chapter 14 variance it's
Right.
needed.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
So technically, a brew pub can still go anywhere.
Just has to clear some Chapter 14
Right.
variance.
Yeah,
Yep.
if it needs a 14 variance, it'll need a chapter 21 variance, and we would process those at the same time.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
That explains that.
I just wanted to mention that in
I think-
chapter 1410, there is also a mention of childcare facilities. So it's not just schools, but actual childcare facilities. And we've had to reference, or we've had variance requests for that as well.
Thank you for that clarification, April. Jan, I'm not sure we got to your question that,
I think you did.
okay.
There's also a few other adjustments within this, in the use-specific standards. That includes an increased trigger for any of the multifamily amenity standards. Basically, this allows for construction of 4 fourplexes on a lot before it triggers anything. Hence the 17, if you're wondering where that number came from. And then we've also adjusted the maximum units in a single multifamily development, bumped that up to 350. I know there was a question about where did this come from? And that's because we actually eliminated your regulation by density. By doing that, you're actually allowing for a more urban form of multifamily that tends to function better, especially in downtown areas, but also if you have activity centers. And typically, you don't see a lot of multifamily complexes that go above about 320. Once they get beyond that, the property management gets complicated in many cases. And there's something to be said for diversity of ownership on rental properties like that. So sometimes breaking those up is a good thing. But we wouldn't expect you to run into a lot of variances on this. Your typical is usually in that 300, 320 range. Within automotive, the automotive section, we had that conversation about service bays at the prior meeting. Those have been all struck out throughout that particular section. So those are all cleaned up. Hopping over to 142, there was a section on recreational use specific standards. And we'd gotten some questions about this. Sometimes it had to do with like netting, things like that. And Julia kind of said, well, is this actually ever going to be an issue? And the conclusion we came to is, if it is, it's some type of redevelopment, and a variance would likely be guaranteed, would almost be guaranteed to be granted. So at that point, we say, well, do we actually need this provision? We said, how about not? So that provision was removed out of there completely. That would have affected golf courses and country clubs, simplified that. Within commercial, we adjusted the method of measurement for brew pub and nightclub lounge to directly reference Chapter 14, just for consistency's sake. Again, residential and park separations were removed from that. Those were new provisions that we pulled out. And then within industrial, the maximum size for office and self-storage was eliminated. This does tend to self-regulate. Some of your highest rents per square foot are actually in the self-storage industry. So they are not going to be inclined to have extra office space they don't need. So that eliminates that. It also eliminates a potential question that can come up, because a lot of times your self-storage also includes office rental components. And those aren't a bad thing. Those are actually really handy for contractors, things like that, that don't need a fancy storefront, but need a place to have some lay down. So we took that out completely as well. Any questions on these three? All right. Hopping over into institutional, again, this has that separation for correctional facility. We've already talked about that. Same thing with the infrastructure for wind and solar power generation. Within agricultural, you'll see elimination of the noise curfew and illumination standards for what we call agritainment. General understanding is if you live next door to a place that does events, things like that, you know what comes with that. And kind of with talking with Julie, they haven't gotten complaints about this type of thing before. If you have if it's a working farm, working ranch that also does events, they've just never had it come up. So based on that, we decided to go ahead and pull that provision out. And then we also eliminated the height restriction in the downtown business district in 148. We actually thought we had that in a different part of the code. Turned out it was not there, so we added it here to correct that. So got that provision back in there. And so that's kind of your use-specific standards. Any other questions in this particular space within the code?
Can you go back to the table? I just want to make a comment just to be clear on something that Julie and I were talking about here. Go previous slide.
More? All right.
So, because I get how it might be confusing of why this is even up there. If all we're saying is that brew pub, nightclub, lounge, we're just going to refer to Chapter 14. But that's because the original recommendation was actually to place a restriction of distance with a residential area. But at the direction of council, we removed that. But we still want to leave this reference so that it's easier for somebody looking to do that to see it somewhere that says refer to Chapter 14. Because oftentimes, again, people aren't going around at different chapters, right? So I just want to be clear that we did remove the residential distance limitation that was originally placed on there and simply are putting those simply as refer to Chapter 14 type of references.
Amend between the second and third, we'll just take out the list and we'll just put in refer to Chapter 14. So then because we want to leave, like as Chance said, those nuggets there so people know, but to avoid conflicts, we'll just put the link to Chapter 14.
And if we misheard that direction, please correct us on removing that 300 feet from residential.
Just me. I have a question on the agritainment and your statement of if you live next to that, you already know. But if you live somewhere and next door becomes that, that's all right. City says that's a great thing. I mean, a lot of my responses are because we already have a situation in town and we have an owner that keeps coming to us, asking us to do something about the noise of an adjoining property, and our hands are tied. And I just see in this ordinance that we're inviting more of those same opportunities. That's the only reason that this bugs me.
So the noise ordinance should cover the noise section, and agritainment is typically, it's like a corn maze.
Okay.
During harvest, you will sometimes have farmers that will set up lights and work around the clock if they are on a deadline. And so I don't think that use is any more obnoxious than, a corn maze use. So I don't think you're going to see existing fallow fields turned into agritainment. It's a byproduct of an actual agricultural use that's already there.
But we passed this Texas Proposition 1.
Yeah.
So part of the state constitution, remember, is you can do what you want with your land for farming and ag and everything else.
I think I'm not seeing it as farming. I was seeing it more like a big open field that is now an event center. So let's have bands.
That's not agritainment, though.
Yeah, okay, and it was just when he made that comment.
Yeah, it's usually stuff like
Thank
corn
you.
mazes,
The
things like
definition specifically that's in here, tied it to ongoing agricultural activities on site.
Okay.
And so I think.
Well, and you're right, if you live next to a farm, you do know. So that was my question on, I guess, agritainment, just making sure it wasn't broader to just be, we've got an open space, let's turn it into something like,
It's
a-
not Pearl Jam playing out in the field.
exactly, or let's
I'll
have,
be there.
let's put some go-karts in the middle of downtown because, you know, it used to be quiet, but
How about a baseball field? I think that's been done, though.
that could be allowed too.
Don't come.
Hopping into some other land use changes, within the supplemental standards for accessory uses, we've clarified the bypass lane language. It was a little bit vague, so we cleaned that up so that people know when you're supposed to have that exit lane. So if you're in the drive-through and you're before the order board and you change your mind, something happens, you can bail out. That's a standard provision, and that's exactly why it exists. But it wasn't clear where it measured from the order board or from the actual drive-through window. If you make it applicable to the drive-through window, it creates a lot of havoc for your site plan. So you want it to be applicable from the order board. So we made that adjustment. We also eliminated the fuel pump separation distance from residential. After looking at this, we were concerned about it creating some nonconformity issues down the road. If you have some of these older corner stores and they want to start doing pump replacements, things like that, you don't want that to be a hindrance necessarily. And then within home occupation, we had a correction in the sign size restriction, just an error of inches versus feet. A 2-inch by 2-inch sign is impractical, so we fixed that. And that's actually one of your best methods for regulating home occupation is signage versus trying to get hyper-specific to each use. If you address signage, you tend to address the whole thing pretty globally. Within 168 parking applicability, the exception for parking in the historic overlay was adjusted so that parking still applies to certain residential uses. Basically, it's mimicking what you do today versus completely releasing that. The access management applicability, we corrected the reference to be to the director. It was a building official reference that we actually wanted that to be going to the director of development services. And then in 178 and 188, there are two related sections. These had a very specific language about driveway permits. Your driveway permitting tends to take place most often in conjunction with a building permit or with a site plan. So we generalized the language just to say permits generically. So that way it can be nested under another application without creating any other issues. So just kind of a bureaucratic cleanup so you don't have an extra process that exists for no reason built into your code. Questions on any of these? Hopping into development standards, we have an adjustment to a figure that addresses how you measure your method of measurement for alignment with median breaks. It's a rare provision in Victoria. You don't have that many examples of it. But we want to make sure we're using the same method of measurement for any separation, which is usually edge of driveway to edge of break. That one was actually being measured middle of driveway to edge of break, so we had to make that correction. Within 186, for one-way and circular driveways, we had some may language that needed to be shall language. If you've been around me for any length of time, you know I'm not a fan of the word may in a regulation. You either do or do not. There is no try. So we also generalized the type of curb. Rather than specifying a stand-up curb, it could be any type of curb. That's because your one-way and circular driveways are most common on a rural type of lot. Otherwise, you simply don't have the space for it in most cases. So generalize that so it would function well with a roadside ditch type of section. 191 was adjusted on internal storage. You might know this as minimum throat length. What we did is we just did some revisions to really simplify the table and simplify the code language. It still says effectively the same thing, but uses a lot less words. That's always a good thing in our world. Within 193 for traffic impact analysis, we added a clarifying statement that if you've got traffic data from TxDOT available, you can absolutely use it. You don't have to go reinvent wheels. So we want to make sure that was really clear in there. But usually that's understood in a city and applicant conversation, but memorializing it in the code makes it crystal clear. Any questions on any of these? Yes, sir.
Section 21-193, who has to do a traffic impact analysis? who would be required under this code to do a traffic analysis?
So that's all based on your threshold triggers. So if a development project, as this is written, has greater than 3,000 average daily trips or 300 peak hour trips, then that proposed development's required to perform a traffic impact analysis. That type of analysis is performed by an engineer, typically a traffic engineer that specializes in that type of work. So that's typically who does it. There are provisions in your code where there's a way to do, like, if you're getting a series of projects all on the same corridor, that they could band together to do one together, or could actually essentially pay into a pot where the city would actually do it. But generally speaking, TIAs are almost done on a project-by-project basis by a traffic engineer hired by the applicant. And then the city engineer helps them scope it correctly. There's a scoping conversation. They perform it, and then it's a quality assurance, quality control process for the city to verify that, yes, this TIA is correct, and the mitigation that is recommended is consistent with standard practice in engineering.
Mark, if I can add one thing to that. That section says that the need for a TIA shall be determined by the city engineer based upon the results. So I think you're asking, if I understand your question correctly, what triggers the need for the TIA? And the way I read this, and correct me if I'm wrong, chances that the city engineer determines, yes, we need one, or no, we don't, for any specific permit that's made.
Yeah, and that
Or
3,300, that's the provision that the city engineer would use to make that determination. But it could very well be that they say, yes, it hits that threshold, but TxDOT has already designed the improvements for that corridor. They're in construction, and therefore we know it's unnecessary. So that's where the city engineer could apply good engineering judgment to say, yes, it's triggered, but there wouldn't be any mitigation resulting from it. So why do it?
And would this apply only in a commercial setting?
It could. So typically it's commercial settings. If you got a large master plan development, it could apply there. I don't think y'all have seen one of a large scale. Usually it takes a few hundred acres to kick it over into a 3,000 threshold, 3,000 or 300 threshold. But it also depends a lot on the layout. If you have, I don't know, 1,000 homes going in, and they've got 2 points of access onto existing roadways, they're going to hit those peak hours at those intersections almost undoubtedly. So that might prompt it. In those cases, you'd probably want it.
The reason I bring this up is schools, basically. I mean, we've had schools put in and created traffic problems. This would alleviate that problem if somebody, or they would have to do an analysis to show?
Yeah, they would have to do an analysis to show.
Okay.
And something that a lot of school districts have gotten very comfortable doing that now. They don't like being the creator of issues. They don't have to be. Your mileage may vary, though. Any other questions? All right, I will hop into the next one. Within subdivision procedures and definitions, throughout this whole of Article 6, we've adjusted. So instead of using the term homeowners associations, we broadened that to property owners associations. And that's mainly because you can have commercial developments that are unified developments that have shared infrastructure elements. They create a property owners association. A homeowners association is simply a type of property owners association. So we've generalized that to a POA and did that throughout the whole code. Within section 21.262, we just clarified that the sidewalks are on both sides of the road, making sure that's clear. Then we adjusted the threshold for a maximum number of units without a secondary access. Your current code says 50. Fire code and Appendix D says 30. We usually have that 30 in there as a standard, but y'all are used to just working with this 50. If it ain't broke, don't break it, is kind of our rule for this. So we adjusted that back up to 50, leaving your current standard in place. And then within 21.305 site plan, we just clarified that site plans are submitted in a form approved by the director. Basically, this is future proofing. So that if you at some point transition to allowing submission of just a straight PDF set of plans, that can be done versus you will provide, 5 complete sets of, paper documents, and you now have half of a tree that's sitting on your desk, sort of situation. And then we added the animal use to definitions and deleted kennel, which is something we talked about at the prior meeting. Any questions on any of these? All right, that's the highlight reel. Any questions about any of those changes overall? Anything that we missed along the way?
I have questions about 2 of them.
Yeah, sure.
Well, not those, but in section 21. You want to bring those up now, or you want to go through your next steps and I'll bring up some new things?
I would say go ahead and bring up anything new right now. That'd be easiest for me.
21-201.
All right, found it.
Has to do with landscaping.
Where might we find it in the code? 21-201?
21-201. 201.
It's on page 144 of your draft.
Thank you.
That's easier to find.
Yeah, I guess I'm just gonna have to.
We've been asked the question about trees, crepe myrtles and palm trees. And I'm not an arborist. They're not trees, correct? But yet so we don't count them?
Right, a palm is a specific type. It's actually not a tree or a shrub. It's a palm. It's its own thing. You have one type of native palm found in Texas. That's the Texas palm or Mexican palm found in the Rio Grande Valley. Used to kind of come up this way. You'll still occasionally find them, but it's rare. And then you have palmettos, which are a very shrubby looking palm.
That's shrubby. Yeah. But king palms,
Those are
queen palms.
non-native. All those are planted.
So I'm trying to get to the section in particular. Hold on.
Don't have a shrub credit.
201.
Oh, there it is, okay.
Yeah, number 4, sorry, I'm just catching, it's should not count towards tree. We don't actually have shrub credits, so we just need to delete or shrub.
That's in C4? Okay.
So you can, the ordinance is written, you have to have, so many planting beds or whatever, but we don't, other than the parking barrier where it says how you have to have the shrubs, we don't actually specify number and things.
Right.
We just specify number of trees. So you can use we'll delete or shrub. You can use all of those for shrubs, but not trees.
So should or shrub credit or shrub be
Yes, we're gonna
removed?
delete or shrub. The following plants may not count towards tree credit to meet the landscaping requirements.
So a
And-
palm tree won't count towards a tree credit?
They die,
Yeah,
and then it's a code enforcement issue.
I know several people that have had palm trees, had
Tropical
problems with them
Smoothie
and said never.
developed their site plan with all palm trees that then died during Winter Storm Uri, and they had to replace them all.
But isn't that the risk you take? I'm just, that's kind of the risk you take, that you might lose it in a freeze, you're gonna have to replace it.
Code enforcement, more code enforcement efforts for us to divert when we could be working on more substandard buildings or whatnot.
I'd rather see somebody.
And I'm not
come in-
sure that we require, I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Julie, but it's always, in general, when it comes to landscaping, it's very difficult to enforce an upkeep part of it. Because, developers go through the process of checking this box and putting this and that at the beginning. In this instance, I'm not sure we could have forced them to put palm trees back up.
No, we can't. With this, we will be able to, but in practice, I don't
TB had a
believe
palm
we'll
tree
really
died.
focus a lot of effort on that unless it's a very high visibility, we get complaints.
I know of one situation where there were a bunch of palm trees, freeze clearly killed them. And the property owner was told by somebody or other, give them an entire year before you take them down. So we had obviously dead palm trees for a year. until, and it's like Mr. Garza said,
And the
enforcement.
intent is not to prohibit them. If you want to use them in your landscaping, you just would have to also have other trees to count towards the
Right.
tree credit.
And
So it could be it would be a mixture if you wanted to use them.
there could be a variance if somebody wanted to have
That
these
gung-ho.
be their trees. We could take a look at it.
I was gonna say, they may have an idea and they're looking for more of a tropical thing, and all of a sudden you're gonna put them an oak or something like that that may not go with their theme. And so we're restricting them and we're telling them that, no, I'm sorry, you want this look, but you've got to put a couple of oaks or magnolias or something in there, which,
Yeah, some of it has to do with like tree performance. A palm tree doesn't really offer shade. It is something, it's something that you look at versus, it doesn't give that extra benefit of shade, which is the main reason you have tree requirements for provision of shade. So there's a performance difference.
I just think we should count palms, but it's,
what about the crepe myrtles? I don't have a problem with crepe myrtles.
I like them.
They're drought tolerant, they're heat tolerant.
What was the reason or the thought process of adding that? Because they're currently,
They're not trees, they're shrubs.
they're not trees, they're shrubs.
I think every horticulturalist can agree that they're not trees.
There's some that grow as tall as trees.
You
You
can
have to
prune
train
them,
them.
you can prune them into
Great
a
house, I got one
single
that's taller than my house.
trunk, but they're still not a tree.
I could see not counting them as a tree, but
You can still use them, you know, you can use everything. These is just the prohibition of tree credit list.
and remind me one more time, what tree, like 2 trees minimum, right?
It could be a 1 tree minimum if your development's small enough.
But if you're tight on, so I'm just thinking, the root system, tear up any parking lot or street. We have plenty of streets where the roots are pushing up streets, where I'd rather have a palm tree there. But I'm trying to make that, because palms don't have the roots like an oak.
There's a lot of other trees besides palm or oak.
Not
This-
mesquite.
What are those, sorry about roots, what are those that are used, that they have the
Pecan.
lilac flowers?
Brings its own issues.
There's vitexes.
Yes, those are really popular for parking lots because of the root system.
Okay.
Vitexes, cedar elms are used a lot. They have the benefit, they're trees in winter, actually, when they fall, they disintegrate, so you don't have to sweep them up. Extra benefit.
Okay. I don't- All right, 210, section 210.
Yes, screening fences,
Yep.
okay.
So the chain link with weave is not an option anymore?
It's currently not an option. That hasn't changed. And the rationale is that it's not really opaque. You can see through it. I believe. But the chain link with weave prohibition has been in our ordinance for over a decade, if not longer.
The only issue I have with that is that it is one of the more secure fences that are out there.
And it's allowed, fencing that is not required, screening fences, you can have chain link. It's just when you're required to have a screening fence, you have to have these materials.
I know of a property owner that has an adjoining property owner that has to put up a screening fence, and they wanted to tear down the chain link there and replace it with a wooden fence. But because of security reasons, and we see the wooden fences broke out all the time, especially on Rio Grande behind Jack in the Box.
So we also
Right.
allow,
The chain link is definitely the way to go.
well, we also allow the use of landscaping, vines, and similar methods as equivalent, providing such materials meet performance standards within 2 years of planting. So Glass Doctor put up a very nice, like a wrought iron fence that in place of their required screening fence, but then grew vines to climb up it so that it provides that opaque screening. So there are,
But like palm trees, those die with freezes.
not all.
I just think there should be some consideration for businesses that need some security, where a wooden fence does not provide the security you need to keep someone out of your yard.
The screening requirement in our ordinance has nothing to do with security. So if somebody wants to
Double up.
put whatever kind of fencing around the property for security reasons, they're welcome to. It's only,
Double pay.
it's only the parts of the fence that would meet the requirement for screening that it's this stipulation. So the particular fence that you're referring to, if they want to put it up, they can, so long it's not on a side that's requiring a screening.
You gotta pay twice for a fence.
Like I said, this section has not changed. It's what we currently have in our ordinance.
Okay. All right. That's the specific ones that I had from a new email, so.
I'd like to bring up, and I know, Ms. Frogum, you and I have talked about this and communicated about it. So the section that deals with food truck parks, and I believe that's on page 88 in the draft. It occurred to me as I was reading back through this that our De Leon Plaza expansion specifically has locations designed and built into it that would be for food trucks, that would be there for an event. I want to make sure that whatever we're doing here and whatever we're doing there are consistent. I think it's a bad look if it's not. And the way I looked at this definition, and I know, as I understand now on some explanation, that the intent there was that this would be something that would be an ongoing daily service situation. But the way I read the definition of food truck park in the back, it specifically says an area designated for mobile vendors, e.g. food trucks, to park and sell food, beverages, and other retail items or services to patrons, which to me is exactly what those slips built into De Leon Plaza are. So I don't know if we need to address that through the definition. I don't know if we need to make sure that these
For a
food truck
short
parks.
Well, and briefly, just to expand on that.
Yeah.
Just so other council members know what you're talking about. Specifically, the question is because we require that these food truck places, blank down a lot, food truck parks, are on concrete or asphalt. And so I think the concern is that if we're gonna be placing, food trucks on the Leon Plaza, are they gonna be on concrete or asphalt? We did confirm that the area that they would be in De Leon Plaza is stamped concrete. And I think you or somebody else had brought up in our internal conversation where we might want to put the food trucks at the soccer complex.
Yes.
Which would be on the existing concrete foundation out there. So I'm not disagreeing that some clarification is probably needed in the definition, but that's why it came up. And so,
That was my initial
Yeah.
concern, but looking through some of the
Yeah.
other requirements, I think we need to make sure
So my
everything's matching
recommendation
up.
would, let's clarify the definition that it be daily operations, because then I think De Leon Plaza would not meet that. But I do think the food truck park section of our ordinance, which actually complements a food truck operations section in chapter 14, they go hand in hand together. That entire section needs to be looked at, getting the committee back together that originally created it, which was fire department, city secretary, health department, because I think there's been a lot of changes in operations and food trucks since that was first written in 2016. And a lot of it was also being driven by Mr. Halapaska as far as requiring commercial kitchens and commissary. And with the fact that the food truck parks have changed, or the food trucks, the actual trucks and trailers have changed so drastically, we don't really need a commissary kitchen, I believe, which is sprinkled in our ordinance. So I think, but it's not just fixing it in the UDO, because we have that section in the occupational license section of our ordinance, and they go hand in hand. We really need to kind of defer that out to a committee to look at it. But in the interim, to fix De Leon, we can just clarify daily operations.
And just so I'm clear, so the other requirements here, would De Leon Plaza meet, even if we change that definition? De Leon Plaza would then be excluded from these requirements?
I think if you are specifying that food truck park is defined as someone that has food trucks and, daily, 365 days a year, then De Leon doesn't meet the definition, but De Leon does not meet all of these because there's not necessarily a commissary kitchen or wastewater hookups at De Leon. So it meets some of them, but not all of them.
This is a provision that contemplates a privately held food truck park versus, a circumstance like you have at the soccer complex or at De Leon Plaza, where you have them as the infrastructure to support events. And, in those cases, you usually want just the electrical and maybe water hookups, mainly so that way you don't have to deal with generators, because those are noisy and not fun.
Yeah, I understood the intent, and I thought that's where it was going, but, obviously, there's a clause in here that says this applies to improvements on private or public property, and so I want to make sure we're consistent.
Yeah, I think the interim
Easy to tweak.
is an easy tweak to the definition about daily operations. But in the long term, I think that entire section in all chapters of our ordinance needs to be looked at and overhauled.
So for this, if it was just a food truck park, which was set up to lease spaces for a food truck to sit there, right? It's just the food truck that needs to be on concrete or asphalt. The rest could be a crushed granite or grass or whatever. It doesn't have to be the entirety being concreted or asphalted, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, the driveway.
Yeah,
and
it's
any
a spill and
fire
leak
lanes,
provision.
yeah. The pathways and things could be.
Okay. And so, but the number 15 does not allow them, if they were to rent a space in a food truck park, they got to leave every night? Or is it?
And that's how our current ordinance, and it's
Correct.
also mimicked in the occupational license section, as well as the parked on concrete or asphalt section.
And the thinking behind that was, I can't remember. I remember talking about it in 2016, but I can't remember the thought process behind it.
I think you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think, food trucks can be seen as competition to restaurants. And so I think there are people on, two ends of the argument related to food trucks, right? There's the side that says make it very hard for food truck parks to exist because they're going to compete with brick and mortar, restaurants. And then there's the side that says, no, this is completely different. It's not the same, but let's just try and be intentional with ensuring that they're safe places to congregate and do this type of thing, right? Things like restrooms and just different things. So it just, where our community and stakeholders relevant to the conversation stand now compared to 2016 may or may not be different. And that's why Julie's suggesting that we probably should go through that exercise.
The health department also had a say in that because they were seeing trailers. Now I think they clearly know and see and can define what a food truck is. And in 2016, you were seeing all sorts of homemade things that you could kind of sell food out of, but you couldn't actually prep it in all. And I think now if we just define and say what a food truck is and that it can be completely self-service and self-contained, then we could completely eliminate that section.
We need to do some updating.
Yeah, the whole,
Okay.
yeah. And it's beyond development services staff because we need to get the expertise of fire and health department and others that are really more in the day-to-day of it.
Yeah, okay.
It's actually a recommendation in your downtown plan, too.
The city secretary's office actually hasn't sold that permit in many years. We transferred it to the fire marshal's office since they had a part in that inspection. But in 2016, one of the reasons that they required them to leave every night is we were seeing a lot that were no longer mobile. They were removing their wheels, they were up on blocks, things like that. And so it became an issue where we really didn't have an enforcement besides the police department for that. And so code enforcement was finding that they saw these trucks. And so I think that was part of the reasoning that we
Okay.
required that they leave every night to ensure that they were mobile.
Okay. Okey-doke. All right.
Any other items? All right, so this gets us kind of to what happens next. So again, we're looking for any dais amendments. One of the ones we got noted for an adjustment is to look at the food truck park definition to make sure we get that cleaned up and clarified. Otherwise, we're in this adoption process. We're at second reading here on the 16th. Third reading tentatively scheduled for the 6th. Once this is finally passed and done, we give you a final deliverable of here it is as adopted. You go through the conversion process, and that's it. So, any further questions? All right.
Don't have any. Thank you. All right. Well, here we are. How's everybody feeling about it?
Very good.
I'm glad we've taken time to.
Have we taken enough time?
Is everybody okay with the timeline of the final reading on the 6th, or?
Yeah, as long as they have everything changed.
You know, I think one thing at least I've been contacted and from people that haven't contacted me before about this that I think are looking at it. I think it is good that we've taken this amount of time, no doubt. And there's some new things that some folks that I thought maybe had been in the process in terms of previous discussions and that sort of thing weren't for whatever reason, whether through their own or didn't know or just chose not to be. And I think now that this is becoming more of a reality, I'm hearing, you know, a little bit more here and there from some folks that I think realize, oh, this is going to directly impact me, and so they're weighing in at this point. You know, that causes me a little bit of concern just from the standpoint that I want to make sure that we're all comfortable, particularly up here, in terms of did we hear from who we need to hear from? Was there ample opportunity? Did we get what we were looking for? And I don't know the answer to that, but I know that I continue to get kind of conversations and communications trickling in. So just to point that I think that's also been part of my kind of tap the brakes a little bit approach on this, is because I do keep getting communications on it, you know. And I understand the concept behind, well, if you know, there's something in there that's an issue that somebody can get a variance. And I understand that and I get that. What I don't like about that is that when new businesses are looking or someone's looking to develop, what they're looking for is certainty. They want to know, hey, you know, I know exactly what I need to do. I know what this looks like. I know what that looks like. And a variance creates not only uncertainty, but another level of bureaucracy that they have to jump through and more costs and that sort of thing. So I think it's important we get it right, and I'm glad that we've tapped the brakes and slowed down. And I'd like to gauge how comfortable everybody is with, have we done that enough? Do we feel like we've heard enough from outside sources? I don't know.
You kind of mentioned some of the emails or discussions that you've had with some of the public, and I've had a little bit more recently as well. It does seem that some are coming up at the 11th hour because it's becoming a reality, and it may affect them going forward, unintentional or intentional in from that regard. For example, we spent an inordinate amount of time, a long time, at a recent meeting, just even speaking to land uses and separation. I mean, how long did we spend with that discussion? Over a long time. And that was a very, very small section of that. And this document is very large. It's very important, and I do want to give staff credit. I think they've done a great job. This is a huge, huge undertaking, and appreciate it. But I think it does behoove us to get it as right as possible so that when we do vote on it, and if it's ratified, that it's as good and clean as it can be. Yes, there'll still be some things to go in, but I want to make darn sure that we're all comfortable, and the public it feels comfortable as well, even though maybe coming in again at the 11th hour, but it still behooves that we listen and do our due diligence up here. So this needs to go forward, but it needs to be right. And I don't have a deadline of when we vote on it. I know there was kind of an initial January 1st or as close to as possible. But if it's April, if it's May, I mean, it's gonna be okay. I think it's important to get it right.
So are you saying that we should wait on the third reading and just give it more time?
I'm saying that it may be possibly another work session, or so that everybody's questions get answered, or if there's even more stakeholder involvement, because some stakeholders may have not been present or have had some of their concerns heard and maybe answered appropriately. Maybe there's some misconceptions out there, so that everybody feels comfortable for the development here in Victoria. I don't see a rush. We've been going along fine like this for, I'm gonna say 200 years. That
We have let the cat out of the bag that our current ordinance doesn't quite jive with state law. Keep that in mind.
Yeah.
And we do have a consultant that we're continuing to have to pay, I suspect. And I'm not hearing a lot more questions at this point.
We got 3 inches, or how many pages is it now? 400 pages?
Well, keep in mind that a good chunk of it, we just copied and pasted the same regulation in a different format so that it would comply with state law. I mean, I heard a lot of comments about, building height or whatnot, screening fences. That didn't change from what our current ordinance, how our current ordinance is written. So we were trying to be very transparent in those early meetings and went through all of the big changes that we identified. But if it was an existing regulation that we were copying and pasting over, and admittedly in a different format, which, as Chance said in the beginning, the purpose of this is to make it real clear. And so I was like, yes, some of these rules that have been on the books for 30 years that nobody noticed and are now noticing, we achieved our goal of making it very clear and explicit with that land use table.
Yeah, I'll mention too, it's 281 pages in case you're curious. That actually includes your building code, which is not something the UDO traditionally includes. That's about 80 pages of that. This is a very short regulation for a development regulation. Might be the shortest I've done for a unified code. Victoria, I think for a lot of people, especially coming from the outside, would probably be classified as borderline heavenly for a development experience. So I want to make sure y'all understand that that's the space y'all are operating in, is in terms of process and customer service, stuff like that. Y'all are probably one of the easiest out there.
I do get that feedback a lot from out-of-town developers, that very amenable and here to work with them. And but I also want those that have been in Victoria and developed in Victoria, make sure that we take their comments under consideration and make sure that we aren't hampering items that we have going on and what they're trying to accomplish for the city as well.
I do think, though, that, there's a lot of good that we're putting in, lot size, things like that, and we keep changing the goal line. We're creating our own uncertainty with the development community. If, it was going to be January 1, then it was going to be February 6th.
I mean, we have some current deed approval applications that were denied, and under the proposed ordinance, they will not have to go and pay and seek a subdivision plat approval because of the exemption. And so they're in limbo. Either if they want to hurry up and get their permit for their home, they need to go pay the money for a subdivision plat or try and wait for the approval so that they're exempt.
So we have 2 options. We can either table second reading for another 2 weeks, or what is it, 3 probably. We can approve the second reading, see what other further comments we get, and make a decision on when it comes to the third reading, if we need to make some other adjustments. So those are kind of the 2 options we have tonight.
I think we should adopt the second reading and then see what comes when we come to the third reading. We can always table the third reading, like you said, if we have to. But we need to move forward.
So to be specific, I'd like to move to adopt this on second reading.
Further thoughts, discussions on?
How do we, what's the best way for us to communicate that, okay, this is, this is kind of the cutoff, I think we've been receptive to comment and appreciate you guys working through all this as we, have received these in and you say, no, that's already there, great, that's good to know,
Yeah.
I guess what I'm saying is that if we do go forward and adopt the segment tonight, is there a way effectively that we can put notice out through our communications office, through whoever else that says, hey, if you have comments on this, we need them now because, this is gonna happen. And maybe the third reading, if it's not the next meeting, maybe the one after to make sure we have time. But it makes sense to me that if we're gonna do second readings tonight and we approve, that we just need to make sure people know, okay, this is the drop dead date that we need to get information back from people.
Another
That makes
option y'all
sense
can
to me.
consider.
That's giving them a chance. We're giving them, more than ample opportunity, another communication, because I know that the Wednesday morning after it's approved, somebody's gonna call and say, hey, I was gonna ask you about one of these sections in here, so.
Yeah, something that you could consider is a deferred effective date, where basically you approve it, but you set your effective date at a point in the future, and then you actually establish an opt-in, where you can say between now and that effective date, people can start to opt in to the new code. That's something we've done elsewhere. That was practiced in Brownsville for sure. We did that. Bee Cave, McKinney did that recently. And that could be an approach that you use, so that way you can kind of get it on the books. Might help you to sniff out any issues that emerge from actually running it. And if something shows up that's critical, you've actually got time to amend it before it comes full effective. That could be another option for you.
Time period are you talking about for an effective date, like 5 years?
Or maybe like June 1st?
2 months?
Yeah, usually what we see is like a
June 1st, and that would also help us, because we have to create some new application forms and tweak our application forms, and so there's still work to be done after, but it would definitely also help us in the pre-development meetings, being like, well, when are you gonna submit your application? And, because the
But
answer.
they could say, if they did it on May 1st, say, but we want to be considered under the June 1st effective date, or we want to go under this existing code.
Yeah, so if you set that a
Yes.
date, I guess we would have to amend the ordinance language to say that they could opt in and.
Okay.
yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, I think that's a good option.
Just for,
I agree. Thanks.
if
for
I can
bringing that up,
interrupt, before this goes any further, do we have a motion and a second on, okay, everyone is aware of that. We weren't sure over here. It's hard to hear sometimes.
Yes, we have a motion and a
Okay.
second.
Yes.
Ms. Scott made the motion, and Mr. Lofgren seconded it to approve this second reading of the ordinance.
And I'd like to say through discussion that I think through discussion, we've all indicated that that might be a good change to see on the third reading.
Yeah. I think I'd like to see it too.
Yeah, that's
That makes it,
more palatable.
yeah.
So we don't have to change the amendment to include the extended date?
Do that on the third reading.
We don't have to.
Right.
do
Yeah,
it
we
would on
at this
You can
point.
draft it for approval on the third reading.
Yep.
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you for that chance.
Thank
That's why we're paying the
You've
consultant.
been hiding that
No,
option
he's,
or
yeah,
what?
he's like, let me get this pulled out. All right, so is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. You're welcome. All right. So we're into city manager reports, and we are starting with the Victoria Fire Department annual report. And I have only 2 pages of questions since it's his last presentation. 15 minutes, please.
Mayor, council, good evening again. And yes, this was my parting gift, was to be able to stand before you this evening and present the 2023 Victoria Fire Department annual report. I'm not gonna go through here and read every slide. I'm just gonna touch on the high points. Just stop me if you have any questions. We had a lot of opportunities to engage with our community this past year in 2023. Every time we engage with the community, we have a goal, and our goal is to enhance the daily lives of those that we serve out there. Here's a glance at some of our response data for 2023. We had a total of 13,235 calls for service. This is an increase of around 3% from the 12,860 total calls for service in 2022. Of the 13,235 total calls, 2,733 were in the county. That's a slight decrease from last year in 22. The total was 2,832 calls in the county. Here's just a glance of some performance data. You can see the collection fees down there at the bottom. I do want to talk about the hazard collection fee of $32,000. That is not quite accurate. As we were generating this report, the billing company did not have all the billing done and the data for the month of December. So at worst case scenario, that number is only going to grow. But I did want to point out that that number is not accurate. That's just what we had at the time of generating this report. Bystander CPR, I want to talk about that one. As you can see that the national standard is around 30%, and we're sitting at about 18. That is an increase from 2022. From 2022, we're around 14%. What we're doing, we're continuing to work on improving this in our community with all of our community outreach programs, like the hands-only CPR and our civilian responder program. With these programs and moving forward with these and continuing with these, we hope to continue to improve that rate every year.
Just on the cardiac arrest survival,
Yes.
that, I hope I'm not reading that right. Only 4% survive?
Yes, the global rate of survival is 9, and this past year, the cardiac arrest survival rate was 4%.
Really? So if you get called, you have a 96% chance of not making it?
You did in 2023.
Chief Martin, is this, the 4% is the Victoria Fire Department's percentage rate, is not the public rate?
Correct. The global rate is 9%. The cardiac arrest survival rate for the fire department last year was 4%.
What's that attributed to? I mean, is it length of time getting there, or is it cardiac arrests that are,
I tell you what I'm going to do on that.
anyway?
I'm going to defer to the EMS battalion chief, and I'm going to let Chief Mark Martin come up here and comment on that.
And I'll comment after you.
And I'll comment after you.
Rate. The global percentage rates that are on that screen are from 2020. That's the latest Ustein data that we're able to pull up. They don't do that every year. To Councilman De La Garza's question about the survival rate, that is strictly the patients that we transport to the hospital. That is not the amount of people that we get necessarily alive to the hospital. That would be the ROSC rate on the left side, the gray bar. The 4% are people who walk out of the hospital alive. It is a decrease of roughly, I believe, 4% from last year. As you said, Mayor Bauknight, the numbers don't look good, but it is nothing that is necessarily different than how we operate. Unfortunately, when we get the call, it's not always the best circumstances. When someone's heart stops, it tends to stop for a reason, and it's not always in our control to get that going again. I realize the number is not as good as we would like to see it, either as from the city council or from us as a department. We have not changed any practices. We're still maintaining the best equipment that we have, maintaining the same practices, still doing the mandated training and extra training on top of that. It's just, I don't want to say bad luck, but it's
Just surprised.
Well, there's a lot of factors there. Councilmember, did you want to make some remarks on that?
Well, there's a lot of factors involved. That number does look
scary.
bad, and it's
I don't know if
scary.
it's just a scary number.
In
I don't see it as
reality,
bad or anything the
you
department's
have to
doing. It's just-
understand, that's just the Victoria Fire Department's percentage. The reason that there's may appear to be lower than the average rate is because the response times. Sometimes no one is doing CPR in the 10 to 15 minute response time that it takes for them to get there. AEDs aren't always available where these cardiac arrests occur. So it's not really our department's fault. We have to have a lot of public interaction and public participation. It sounds easy, yeah, to say, we're gonna offer this CPR training to the public free, but very few people take them up on that. Their training officer works under my training center for the American Heart Association. And no one trains harder than that group right there. No one. And they offer all types of perks and free classes. It's just that the public has to become more engaged and believe in what we teach and what we have to offer. We're working on it, but we're not exactly there yet. I mean,
I'm sorry if you took it as I was like, why are we doing it only 4%? I would have been shocked if we were at 9 or 10 or 12% that was the only,
But I think one of the key things here that hopefully maybe the public tuning in, can walk away from this conversation is to get training in CPR. Being involved with the American Heart Association and the Heart Walk, which is actually coming up on Saturday, February 2nd, at Riverside Park. That's a huge, part of the mission and the goal of the American Heart Association, because all the data proves that when this happens, you have to have immediate CPR to increase your chance of survival. And that's why everybody has to play a role in this element of it.
I did have a question. You said that the global rate of survival underneath it was from 2020? That data was from 2020. How much has COVID played a role in the change of that? People having COVID, people having a vaccine, whatever have you may, we don't get political here, but COVID also causes issues as well, and so those people may be less healthy now in 2023/2024 than they were in 2020, which may involve skewing those numbers.
That's quite possible. We just don't have that data yet to support that.
Correct.
Yes.
But this number really does, it shocks all of us, and it really makes me see the importance of the community learning CPR, because your next one, the national bystander rate, that's family members are there and don't do anything, can't do anything. And this is a number that's useful to encourage everybody to learn CPR.
Yes, ma'am. That's why I pointed that out earlier, because the national bystander rate for CPR is 30%, and we're at 18. We were only at 14 last year. That's why it's so important for us to continue with these community outreach programs and work every year to increase that number, because successful bystander CPR is critical in increasing that survival rate.
One question, educate me on this, the ROSC rate, I think you referred to, ROSC. What is that? What is that?
That's return to spontaneous circulation. In other words, you get a pulse back.
Right.
Gotcha.
So we can get them to the hospital with a pulse,
Got
but
it.
there's no guarantee that they walk out.
Right.
So
Okay.
Victoria Fire Department does a fantastic job with a high ROSC rate, a return of spontaneous circulation. That's what ROSC stands for.
And the fact that we're, more in line with the global rate in that regard, quite frankly, speaks to, what's been implied around the training, the equipment from the Lucas that we have that keeps that going. Literally a machine that does it for you, so you don't have to rely on human energy to be expended when giving CPR. So, there's a lot of investment that we've done. And so, again, that just speaks highly of the men and women of the fire department.
Yeah. Thanks.
I commend y'all for everything y'all do.
Thank you. Appreciate that. We are community. What you see on this slide are many of the community programs that the department did participate in 2023. Some of those are listed over there in that box down there on the left-hand side. We had a very good community response to these events, and we plan to continue with all of these programs throughout this 2024 year. And there again, back to the bystander CPR, as you can see by those numbers, it's very important that we continue to educate our community and try to educate as many people as we can in that. I want to talk about two huge accomplishments in 2023, and both of these were only possible due to your support. The first one I want to talk about is the Fire Station 1 remodel project. And honestly, when you get down to it, that was much more than just a remodel project. I don't know if any of you had an opportunity to look at that as it was going on, but basically they took a skid steer on the inside of the concrete tilt walls and basically just wiped everything out. So that was a major project, and one of the great things about that particular project is that station is now wind rated, and that gives us four out of our 6 facilities now that we can operate when we have an approaching storm. And it also, being that Station 1 has that rating now, we have a facility on the far south side of town that we can staff and operate out of. So that was a good thing to get done. The next thing was the replacement of the department's SCBA, the breathing apparatus. That project ensures that we have the best equipment out there, and there is some new integrated technology along with these air packs, and also a very extensive warranty. That warranty right there will ensure that the department and the city as a whole will not have a lot of expenditures for the life of these particular units. Mobile integrated healthcare. This is something that has been on the books for a while, and we finally got to implement this program, and it was not up and running until actually June of 2023. The main goal of this program is to identify high-frequency 911 callers and determine their healthcare needs. And we have a person that's in this position, and what they do is they'll go out and they'll meet with these individuals, and we do everything from helping them assess their medications. We help them with their doctor's appointments and all those sorts of things. And what the goal of this is to cut down on those individuals calling 911 and calling an ambulance out there. So we're excited about this, and we don't see anything but this program growing in the upcoming years. You can see currently we reached out to 40 individuals, and we have about 14 of them enrolled right now. So this will continue to grow, and I think that this position will expand over the years. And like I said, it's very useful in helping reduce the 911 calls and the frequency. I want to talk again about our whole blood program. As you're aware, we started this program about 4 years ago, and we were one of the very few departments in the country that initiated the whole blood program. You can see that in 2023, we used about 30 units of blood, and of those patients that received blood, there was a 85% survival rate. This program has proved to be a very beneficial and life-saving tool, and we will continue to embark upon this program. And we had an increase as well, because last year in 2022, we had 27 units that we used, and we're also still right around that 85% survival rate. That's it. Is there any other questions?
No, thank you, Chief Martin.
Okay.
you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
So next up, we'll have Chief Young come up and provide the annual report for the police department.
Evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Chuck Young, and as the Chief of Police for the City of Victoria, I'm both honored and excited to present this annual report highlighting some of the department's accomplishments, challenges, and visions for the future. As you can see before you, you have the annual report booklet to review. It's full of stats, numbers, and we will use this presentation as a companion to that booklet. The items that we're going to talk about are the divisional breakdown for the changes, the crime stats for last year, information on community engagement unit, resource allocation, which is the fully staffing of the highway interdiction team, and a list of future goals. Some of the examples are we promoted, sorry, I'm going to this. There we go, division breakdown. Last May, upon assuming the role of chief, I basically restructured our entire command staff to align with my goals. The retirements and changes at the command level allowed me to promote Deputy Chiefs Moya and Fetters to their new positions. I moved all but one lieutenant and one captain out of the positions that they held before my selection as chief in May. Basically, I restructured the entire upper tier of the department. Through this movement, I created a new lieutenant position that will focus solely on investigating and retouching our open cases, our unsolved murders, and other high-profile investigations. I moved or promoted commanders to their most productive positions by placing the right leaders in the right spots to advance this department into the future. An example of that is Deputy Chief Fetters. He's the new Operations Bureau Chief who works with Captain Jason Turner. Turner has a combined daily operational oversight of the Patrol and Investigations Division. Deputy Chief Fetters is tasked with planning and looking toward the future and establishing programs to improve these operations, leadership development, and to improve the educational and skill level of the entire department. It's the same thing on the Admin Bureau side of the house. Deputy Chief Elaine Moya focuses on community engagement, public information, the budget, recruiting, training, and oversight of the Department of Special Projects. She works alongside Captain Kevin Sanderson, who is at the operational level. Kevin and Turner both basically work on the operation level of the day-to-day functions of the police department. Deputy Chiefs Moya and Fetters are taking that next level up, that thinking, forecasting futuristically ahead. The overall crime. As you can see in the booklet, we ended 2023 with an overall 0.17 reduction in Part 1 offenses. That's 3 for the whole year. Violent crime was down about 17 offenses, which was about 6%. Property crime was less than 1% or 14 offenses from the rating period before, with a total of 1723 compared to 1726 the year before, which resulted in a reduction of 3 offenses. 3 offenses during the year, that's not so bad. But Class 2 crime is actually where we made up a little bit of ground. We're up 5%, which is 241 additional offenses, but this is where the enforcement portion of it is. This is where the drugs and the proactive police department, the proactive work of the police department is actually captured. The Class 1 breakdown. The glaring uptick in this mix is the vehicle burglaries. As you can see on the scale, go to the next page here. Oops. What am I doing? There we go. Sorry, I'm going backwards. Apologize. So the uptick in this entire mix is the vehicle burglaries. We're seeing more offenses, and the statistics show that they involve the city's youth offenders. The catalytic converter offenses of years past, 89 in 2022, compared to only 16, but still in 2023. This slowed down tremendously because I believe because of the city ordinances, and I think it's because of the state laws that are existing involving the possession of cut catalytic converters. Still, the vehicle burglar offenses where the community members leave their valuables inside of the vehicle and the cars are unlocked overnight. It's been a struggle for us in 2023. 343 crimes compared to 310 in the previous years. Well, what have we done about it? We've met with the district attorney's office, the partners, and the juvenile court judges to evaluate the process and some of the positive changes that have been made at that level. We focus the staffing resources to identify the people, the places, and the behaviors. Just in this last week, we've had 3 offenses. It's a problem that's still going on in 2024. Just in this last week, we've had 3 handguns were left in vehicles and the cars were broken into. So this has to stop. I mean, folks are leaving stuff inside the cars. We just have to address this.
And people are leaving their cars unlocked.
Yeah. Yes, sir, that's right.
So that is literally the common denominator in these instances.
Yeah, we have plenty of surveillance video that's actually capturing juvenile offenders or very young looking people that are pulling on doors at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, tugging on doors, wearing fully hooded up, wearing backpacks, and they're finding guns in the cars. One of the recent murder offenses that we had was actually from the offense weapon was actually a pistol taken in a car burglary. So, and it was committed by a juvenile offender. So basically what we've done about it is we've allocated 2 non-patrol personnel just to supplement that additional staff. We've been doing that since July. We've tried a media awareness program. We talk about BMVs all the time. We talk about them in the community meetings. We're talking about it now. We talk about it on Facebook and other social medias. We have to do the hide, lock, and take. That has to be an important thing in our, that has to be part of the message that we're trying to share. So now we're going to talk about crashes. These are the motor vehicle accidents or the motor vehicle collisions. Of the 838 events that we've had this year, 401 of them are either connected to fail to control speed, fail to yield right away, or run a red light. We have to work on that too. We have to work on our driving habits. We have to pay attention, we have to slow down, and we just have to be careful. The performance data, this is basically a la carte version. It's an a la carte slide. It just has about everything on it. But our investigations detectives are assigned to 4,200 cases last year, which is a 6% increase. The records section has a 36% increase in open records requests compared to 2022. We actually have that one as a deficiency or as a opening in our civilian staff, and we're working on filling that position now. Our dispatchers, our telecommunication operators, 168,000 telephone calls to the 911 center, which is a 10% increase from the last year. 97,000 of these calls required a police response. Our average response time is down just over 4 minutes, so that's pretty good. But still, people are in need, and we're getting there quickly. With grant funding, we have a new work group that is now fully operational. It's designed for the drug and human trafficking interdiction process on the highway. We call it now Company C. It's in the Operations Bureau. It's commanded by a lieutenant, and it's been modified to have different work groups. It's the Highway Interdiction Team, Special Crimes Unit, which is narcotics, the Marshals Task Force, our K-9 unit, and the Traffic Safety. Each of these units are now under one official umbrella. They recovered 97 firearms off of traffic stops. 7 occupied stolen cars. While we were sitting here in this meeting just a few minutes ago, we received a page that they stopped another one that was stolen out of Houston, out on Highway 59. We will receive a portion of over $300,000 in currency that's been seized by this work group during our growing partnerships with the county and our federal partners. They've cleared 641 felony arrest warrants, confiscated 5 kilograms of cocaine, 12 kilograms of meth, 160 pounds of marijuana, and on one traffic stop, one interdiction, they recovered 2,500 fentanyl pills. Community Engagement Unit, 87 community events this past year. Can't speak highly enough about this work group, and the work group is small. They've also begun to strengthen and modernize the membership of the Citizens Police Alumni Association and the Civilian Police Academy. They've conducted a very successful second annual Casting with Cops, Blue Santa, different toy drives, 30 presentations that have been organized and presented to different organizations throughout the community. They spearheaded the National Night Out, got 3rd place for a Halloween public safety video that we're fixing to watch. This is all due to the hard work of Sergeant Adam Banda, Senior Patrol Officer John Turner, and Public Safety Communications Manager Lauren Moe. Here we go.
This is Lauren Moe reporting for VPD Channel 96 News, and we're here with breaking news. There have been reports of a large, round subject dressed in all white here at the intersection of Freddie Street and Jason Avenue. There is a large police presence, but fortunately no injuries have been reported. Did you feel that? Oh my goodness, the ground is shaking!
It's actually won 3rd place, y'all.
Authorities are saying that everyone is now safe. There's an officer over there. Let's see if he can do an interview. Officer, do you have time for an interview?
Sure.
Can you tell us who you are and what happened here tonight?
I'm Officer John Turner with the Victoria Police Department Community Engagement Unit, and tonight we had reports of a little round fellow wearing all white, looked exactly like a marshmallow man, terrorizing the neighborhood. He was walking in the roadway, darting out from in between cars, and refusing to cross at a crosswalk.
Well, what's going to happen with him tonight? Are you going to give him some tips about trick-or-treating?
Absolutely. We're going to tell him all about trick-or-treating safely this year.
Okay, and what kind of tips are you going to give him?
Well, we certainly want the kids to stay on the sidewalk. That's the safest place for them to be. And don't dart out between cars because drivers aren't expecting that. And when you cross the street, use a crosswalk and look both ways before doing so.
And what about their costumes? What can he do with his costume to be extra safe?
If kids are out after dark, they need to wear light-colored costumes so they're more visible. They can wear a light-colored costume or carry a flashlight or glow stick or perhaps have the parents add reflective tape to the costume itself. Anything to make them more visible.
Perfect. And speaking of parents, what can parents do when kids come home and they're ready to get in on all that candy?
Well, we're encouraging the parents to check all the candy to make sure it's safe before giving it to the children.
Okay, and the motorists. There's going to be a lot of motorists out that night. What can they do to make sure everybody goes home safe?
They need to be aware. Be more aware than they usually are. Drive slowly, drive safely, because there are going to be a lot more pedestrians out than normal.
Okay, thank you so much, Officer Turner. We appreciate your time. The Victoria Police Department and VPD Channel 96 News want everyone to have a safe Halloween. And remember, VPD Channel 96 News was here first to give you the safest Halloween tips. This is Lauren Moe signing off. And I'm here right now with the witness. Can you explain everything in detail?
I saw everything. It was crazy.
Why didn't it get first place? I have no idea.
Wait till you see the one next year. Wait till next year's presentation. The National Night Out this year, the Community Engagement Unit got 3rd place in the state of Texas and 11th place nationally. We were 14th the year before, as ranked by the National Association of Town Watch for a town of a population between 50 and 100,000. We attended 26 block parties that were visited this year. So the resource allocation, 130 sworn, I need 13 more. I've got 13 openings. 37 civilian spots. We have an opening now for 1 TCO, which is a telecommunications operator, a records clerk, and a crime scene tech. The crime scene tech promoted, moved toward, he's currently in the police academy right now. We have a vacancy rate of about 14%. I'm excited to share with you the progress that we've had toward filling our deficiencies. We've got 6 cadets in the FTO program. 1's going to graduate from an outside academy. 7 just started the academy in the first week of January. 1 lateral transfer just got sworn in this previous week. 2 non-sworn positions are in the process of being interviewed and filled. 6 dispatchers, TCOs, are in the training cycle. And we got 2 folks graduating from the program in the TCO program in the last month or so. So we're looking up. It's positive, and I'm very grateful for that. I'm very appreciative of the help that we're getting from council. The promotions. There's a fine group of folks right there. As we mentioned, we've heavily in developing our personnel. We promoted, just since May, we promoted 4 sergeants, 2 lieutenants, 1 captain, and 2 deputy chiefs in 2023. If you look at these smiling faces, they represent over 140 years of experience. The infusion of solid leadership will guide this place into the future, and I strongly believe that those are the leaders right there. Promotion is a big thing to me, and I want to recognize these officers who have demonstrated the skill sets to become the next level of leader to move us into the next decade. And finally, we have goals. We've got a lot of them, and I can talk about this section for hours, but I know we're almost out of time. But lastly, the future is bright, and some of the new things that we're still working on are getting very close to implementing our groundbreaking on the new public safety headquarters, exploring the advances in forensic science and technology, the Real-Time Crime Center, and a.VISD, Automated Fingerprint Identification System. This system that I'm really trying to grow is an advancement in technology that we can actually process a fingerprint today, collected at the scene of a BMV or car burglary. We can put that into the automated identification fingerprint system, and we're able to tell who the suspect is. Now what we have to do is we have to send that information or that data, that evidence to Corpus Christi, and it could be between 2 and 6 months before we get a return on it. We'll be able to get it much faster if we use equipment. The next thing is our Blue in the School. It's a program that's taught by uniformed officers that are going to expose our youth to theories such as respect, responsibility, caring, fairness, and other situations that they may not receive anywhere else. And lastly, I want to promote the continuing education. We polled our staff currently, and we have 21 with an associate's degree, 26 have bachelor's, 1 has a master's, and with 1 more semester, I'll get mine. This is a great number, but I want to see it grow in the next few years. Lastly, I hear report cards that we get from the citizens, from the community, on the dispatchers and the officers in general. The feedback usually starts out with, they listened, appreciate, great job, quick response, kindness, showed compassion, and appreciation for the act of kindness. These words matter, and how we interact with the public is critical to who we are. I want to thank everyone here for your continued support, and I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge Erin Gabrish, our crime analyst, for her work on this presentation. Thank you, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
No questions? Thank you, Chief. Thank you and everybody in the department for keeping the city safe.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And continued pushing to keep the criminals at bay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great job, Chief.
Thank you.
All right. With that, we do have an executive session tonight. We will not be reconvening after the executive session. The executive session will be up in the conference room. And go ahead.
City Council will recess for executive session on the 16th day of January 2024 at 7:18 p.m. Subject matter is as follows: Texas Government Code 551.087, 551.072, 551.071, and 551.074.